meeting of the Finance Committee for Thursday, October 12th to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Now if we can have a moment of silence for those who have lost their lives in service to our country and to those who have lost their lives due to COVID. Thank you. Is there anybody here for public comment? Seeing none. Next order of business is approval. We've got two sets of minutes to approve. Let's look for a motion to approve the minutes of January 10th meeting. June, thank you, June 10th.
Second.
All right. Any discussion on those minutes? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, passes unanimously. Now, motion to approve the minutes of July 8th.
If I may, Mr. Chairman,
Yeah,
there was in the minutes of that day, the deadline for funds that the town manager was talking about, I'm not too sure if it was 2024 or 2026 when we had to use the funds for.
okay, well, let's have a motion to approve, then we can make
Okay.
discussion on it. Is there a motion to approve?
Second.
All right, now, discussion?
Yes, on the minutes, when we were talking about the FEMA reimbursement, the deadline for using those funds, I'm not sure if it was 2024 or 2026, so I just looked for a clarification in the minutes for that.
I believe it's 26.
2026?
It's 2024 to actually expend
Okay.
funds, but then we have to have them paid out by that, and it's not FEMA, it's the ARPA fund.
Okay, excellent. Okay,
All right, those,
I motion to be corrected to 2024 then.
yeah, okay. Does, Darlene, do you accept the amendment?
Yes.
And who seconded?
Second.
All right. All in favor of the minutes as amended?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Any opposed? So that's 4-0 with 2 abstentions. Thank you. Appointments and hearings, nothing. Communications and correspondence, pass this around, it was in our mailbox, it's from the Mashpee Senior Connection. So, information for everybody to take a look at. Is there anyone from the Board of Selectmen? I do not see. Okay. The school committee liaison, would you like to take anything to say, or?
No, we can wait until.
Okay, no problem. All right, we'll move right along. Update on the request for proposal. Where does that stand, Mike?
I don't have any update, but John took it over.
Well, I don't think he actually took it over. He did take on making that, all those changes for us to give a starting point. So now is it possible to go from there and start looking at it intently as far as, you know, what we need to add or possibly remove?
Oh, yeah, I was under the impression that John took it, but I'm more than happy to take it on, sure.
All right, can you get something to us by, not next meeting, but the meeting after?
Just to clarify, I was under the impression that Mike and Darlene were the subcommittee that was going to
Right.
do this. I offered to do the conversion from the Harwich version to the Mashpee version, and I'm happy to help in any other way if I'm asked.
Yeah.
But beyond that, that was just to get us started without having to rework the obvious.
Right. But that takes a lot of the major changes that we needed to make. There were a lot of them, I'm sure, to change it to say Mashpee or Town of Mashpee as necessary. So thank you for that, John. Now we can get looking at the content more intently. All right, so by the 26th. All right. And now, Mr. Town Manager. Two meetings ago, several of the board members had requested just an update on the situation that we discussed back in May between you and the school committee. So we just wanted an update on where that stands, or just, from my perspective, just to close the loop so that everybody's aware.
Right. Well, I wouldn't phrase it as me and the school committee, but I would say that I tried to answer specific questions that were narrowly related to the issue that was before me. I've obviously had an opportunity to have actually more than one meeting and very constructive conversations with the superintendent, who I highly respect, and I stated that night the same. I think it is always best to reflect and to look back in terms of how the communication should be handled, and I would like to think that if somebody came to the school committee, that, not to suggest that I'm drawing a comparison to the finance committee and the school committee, but if somebody came to the school committee and it involved a town issue, I think the superintendent would reach out to me and say, look, this is the issue that was brought up, blah, blah, blah. We'd have a conversation, and then I would follow up. I think, in retrospect, it would be nice that if I do the same from this point forward. So if there is an issue related to the school, rather than trying to answer it, even though any answer I provide is always in good faith, I would simply defer it to the superintendent and ask that you defer those questions to her. I'd be more than happy to arrange contact with the superintendent to express whatever your question of the evening was, and then arrange for her to, or not for me to arrange, but for you or our office to arrange that it would be followed up on at the next meeting.
All right. Anybody have any further questions on this topic? Hearing none. That's fine. Thank you.
Welcome. Just for clarification, I'm assuming that you all received the updated warrant.
Yes.
Because I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, but I got tied up in meetings all day, literally from meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting and appointment to appointment to appointment, and which I know you don't want to hear, but I just wanted to make sure that I didn't ignore your email. I think it actually went to a couple different people, and I appreciate the fact that the assistant made sure that you got it.
Yep. I appreciate it as well.
We've got 2 sets of them, you're so thorough.
John, you had a couple of questions? Yes, Ms. DeBoer. Sure.
So I'm Patty DeBoer, the superintendent, and I just want to extend appreciation for sort of inviting us here tonight. And if you do have any questions related to anything in the schools, at any time, as the town manager said, I hope that you'll reach out to me. The individuals that came here tonight, I don't know if you know everyone, but Kathy Lewis is a member of the school committee. Nicole Bartlett is our chair of the school committee. Hope Hanscom is the assistant superintendent, and Ashley Lopes is our director of finance. So she is probably the one most likely to answer your questions. But we are here, so if there's anything that you would like to ask, we're more than willing to do so. So just letting you know that.
Well, I do know John had a couple of questions.
Oh, yeah, actually, did you circulate that to
Yes.
guests?
Yes.
Okay. So that was, I mean, we can revisit what happened back in May if anyone cares to. I don't particularly have an agenda to do that, but I would be interested in, as a follow-on to that, what funds have flowed to the school, either directly or through the town, that are COVID-related.
So I'm going to invite Ashley, our director of finance, up to address that.
Sure.
I would like to just have one little blip of a comment, and I don't know if Nicole would like to as well. In terms of the May meeting, I know I was only watching it as video, but it was very upsetting to me because I feel like we're all on the same team. It definitely did not feel like that, and I just hope moving forward that something like that does not happen again. I'd appreciate that. I don't know if Nicole, you wanted to address that?
Sure. I was on vacation when I watched the meeting and was also very upset. But I wanted to make sure I knew everybody. I don't think I know you, James.
Yeah, I'm a recent appointee as of this year.
This year? Okay, well, it's nice to meet you. I've lived in Mashpee since 2009. I've been on the school committee for about 4 years. I'm in my second term. I know John, because I get a lot of things framed in town. My parents are both artists. Patrick, I don't believe I know you.
Patrick Brady. I've been full-time in town since 2007 and part-time before then.
Okay.
But I don't have any children. My children are all grown and gone, so.
And Darlene, I did a lot of time on some ZBA hearings, so I recognize your last name. You wouldn't happen to be related to Mr. Furbush, would you? Great.
Yes, he is my husband.
Right, and of course, I know your wife, who's my son's favorite teacher at the Mashpee Middle High School. So, so I just wanted to say that, you know, we're all volunteers in these roles. And, you know, when I go to town meeting, I'm very grateful to see the recommendations of the FinCom in the town warrant, because I don't know much about all of those issues. And I rely on your judgment and endorsement to inform my votes and the decisions I make at town meeting. So as your elected representative to the schools, I can assure you that we take our responsibility very seriously as well. And what we witnessed and watched the administration and our staff and students and custodians and bus monitors and recess monitors go through last year, we had a front row seat for that. And I can assure you that if we did not feel what we did was warranted, we would not have done it. So I hope that you can at least respect our judgment on that matter. And as Patty said, that we take our stewardship of the taxpayer dollars in Mashpee very seriously. I think combined, the folks that represent the district here have over almost 70 years of experience working in schools, a lot more than me. But I rely on them to inform my decisions as well. And our new business manager, Ashley, I guess our director of finance rather, is happy to walk anyone through how we construct our budget on an annual basis. I was particularly sensitive to a comment that we pad our budget or do something that allows us to repurpose funds at the end of the year and things like that. So I just wanted to make sure that we were being very transparent about how that happens, and that if you, like I said, we have an open door. So we have talked about in the past about how we all have liaisons to these other boards, right? So the Board of Selectmen has a liaison to the school committee. they've never been at one of our meetings. So I think Jeff and I straightened out that there wasn't an expectation that we would necessarily be at every FinCom meeting. But we do hope that if you're going to discuss something about the schools, that you give us an opportunity to be here like we are tonight. So I appreciate Jeff's apology and him taking responsibility for the way that that conversation devolved on that day. And I just want to thank you for that. And I'm sure we won't have to worry about it again.
Well, I definitely will do my best to make sure nothing like that happens again.
All right.
So let me just contribute then. I respect you and all of you and what you say, and, you know, you'll recall that Facebook Messenger exchange that
yes,
you
we
initiated.
spoke at length, yes. we
Yeah,
did.
would have been probably better to talk about it on the phone, if not in person, but it is what it is. So what you just advocated, of course, is a two-way street, and I think part of the concern that I raised at our meeting on the 13th is that this just sort of spontaneously came out of the blue as far as the Finance Committee was concerned. So if there was an interest in two-way open communications, a little preview of that intention would have been beneficial and probably avoided what we're talking about right now. My initial concern was not disputing whether the school committee has the authority to make that sort of judgment on, as I understand it, $250,000 worth of COVID-related hardship bonuses, for lack of a better term. But the
They're
consequence...
merit awards, but yeah.
Well, that may be the technical label, but as you just stated that it was because of the hardships endured, which nobody denies, and it's not limited to school personnel, by the way. Everybody in this room, if not around the globe, has suffered similar consequences with or without added compensation. Nobody lost their jobs. Everybody still got their federal stimulus checks. But everybody else in town that doesn't work for the school department is probably saying, if they even know about it, gee, when do we get ours? So I think it put the town manager in an awkward position. I'm guessing that there was a line outside his door from other unions and department heads
Was there?
wondering,
I don't
you
think
know,
that there was, but-
when their opportunity is going to come around. So maybe that wasn't contemplated when the school committee made that decision, but it should have been. And I know part of your concern that you expressed in the text message was the term you used, you know, it's going to play out in the media. But it has not. As far as I know, the
Oh,
public...
it was a
doesn't-
busy week that week. We didn't get picked up, but it was lucky.
Well, I don't know if it's lucky, because as we sit here today, the public still does not know that the school decided to give bonuses to its employees, or the reasons for it. Plus, the fact that it happened in executive session in two successive meetings, which is kind of mysterious. The reason for the executive session on the agenda was strategy for union negotiation. And I don't see how this topic correlates to that purpose. And then it's not just that, but it was the additional decision, presumably also, but unnecessarily in executive session, to ignore the recommendations of the Capital Improvement Committee and go ahead and fund an audio system. So those two things together adds up to $400,000 or $500,000, I think, both of which have the effect of reducing the potential turnback if the school committee did not expend all of the funds that were voted by the voters at town meeting. So the net of it all is these expenditures, whether they come from the town, the budget, the federal government, or whatever, they're still taxpayer dollars. And I just think the school committee missed an opportunity to be forthcoming and transparent. And in the future, hopefully, that approach might be revisited for future clarity.
Well, I'm glad you raised all those again, John, so I can address them really specifically. So I believe the procedures we did follow were proper. Any award, any bonus, or any money given to teachers has to be part of bargaining. So we are required to do that in executive session. That's why it had to be discussed at executive session. However, the because this was already appropriated money in our budget, Patty spoke to the town manager to alert him of what the school committee was doing. As far as I know, that's what we're obligated to do. So I believe we followed that properly.
Were any beneficiaries of these funds not union employees?
Yeah.
So that part of it at least need not have been, nor should it have been, an executive session.
Well, it was kind of difficult to have a conversation about a subset.
I agree, these are difficult times.
Yeah. Your second question, I think Ashley's going to address, and I'm really surprised that the accurate information hasn't reached you by now. So I'm not exactly sure where the broken link is there. But do you want to talk about the second thing?
Sure. Does everyone have the COVID funding as well? I sent that over to Jeff this morning.
Yes.
Does everyone have a copy? Okay.
By what means should it have reached us?
I think there's probably a few. First of all, it's public record. This was released at a school committee meeting several months ago. So the fact that the public's not aware of what we did or how we did it is completely false. So Ashley, do you want to take through?
Of course. So I'm going to start with the FM amplification system. And I'm Ashley, by the way. I met most of you at the last meeting, but I'm the Director of Finance for the schools. I started in September. So we did put on FM amplification systems for the FY22 budget for capital. It was denied by the capital group. And because of that, we were then allotted the opportunity to use our ESSER funds, our federal dollars from the COVID relief, to buy these pieces of technology. That's one of the mandates. If you have alternative funding, you cannot use the ESSER fund, but because we did not have alternative funding, we were able to use ESSER funds. So if that handout that Patty just gave you, this memo on the back, it says FM amplification systems. I've listed out the price for each of the schools that it cost, and then also our funding sources. So as you can see on here, the only amount that was used from the general fund was $24,000. That amount was allocated in the budget in FY21, and that was done during the FY20 cycle. So we didn't go above and beyond what was budgeted for that expense, and it was detailed when we talked about it in our school committee meeting throughout the year. And this was actually given to my school committee members in public session, so we had discussed it. So we were not over and above spending because it got kicked out of CIP, but we were given the opportunity to use outside funding sources that were not through the town.
Yeah, and I did not suggest that you were spending outside of the budget.
Well, when you mentioned about $400,000, that's not all from the general fund, and that had nothing to do with the turn back that was going to be given back to the town after FY20.
Okay, but I didn't dispute whether it was budgeted, just so we're clear.
Okay.
I only made the comment about whether the Capital Improvement Committee approved it or recommended it.
Right, so you get all that, though?
Yeah, I'm not challenging you on your legitimacy in taking that action. I'm questioning the optics, among other things.
But can you acknowledge that you were incorrect in the allegation that you've made now twice?
Well,
that
I
we
see this
used?
is dated today. So if this is the way by which it's becoming public knowledge
Well,
for something that happened back in May.
We updated this to reflect the actual amount for accuracy.
Well-
Because,
And it's a memo to you for
Yeah.
today. So if you read the detail on the back, this memo and discussion happened on March 17th
Right.
with our committee. And as a part, as Nicole mentioned, this was allocated funds, and we were already obligated in the budget session before, and as Jeff mentioned in that meeting that you had, we were able to make those funding decisions at the time.
Okay.
I'm a little, pardon me, I'm a little confused, the 24,000, but these were COVID funds for the amplification system.
So in our FY.
What's this have to do with COVID?
Well, I can answer that. So part of mask wearing makes it very difficult for, I'm sorry? Oh, okay, sorry. Hi, Hope Hanscom, Assistant Superintendent. Mask wearing for students with auditory processing difficulties or hearing loss, it makes it virtually impossible for them to learn. And so as a result, we needed to up the process of getting kids where they could access the learning.
Or
So
stop
that is
wearing
how-
masks?
Well, that's not actually up for discussion, Mr. Brady.
Yep.
But what is, and I really feel like is missing here, is still that piece of how we're gonna communicate, because it's really feeling very non-collaborative right now, and that's frustrating. So I wonder if maybe instead of sort of the you did this, you did that, we can talk about next time you feel like you have frustrations that you want to address, the best way we can address them so that you would have this information, because it is all public. It's all at the public meeting, and it's really, obviously I'm emotionally attached to this as a taxpayer and also as an employee, because it's feeling like we're titting for tatting as opposed to solving a problem. And I think we can all agree that we want better communication. We don't want this to happen again, I'm assuming. I mean, right? Yeah, I would imagine none of us are sitting here volunteering our time, because this is still my family's time, to do this. So I guess I just want to put that out there. And in terms of masks, sir, the Board of Health meeting is happening right next door. So you're certainly going to get more information from that.
Yeah, and I agree with you and subscribe to the same concept. I don't think historically there has been any difficulties between this committee and the school committee on communications and being forthright and open and candid and forthcoming. My singular focus was on these two events, particularly the bonuses that were handled at that meeting in May. So that's the narrow context that I'm perhaps generalizing too much about.
Okay, so are your questions on how that was handled answered?
You have provided answers, yes.
Okay.
So I guess if there's a takeaway for that, if we're looking to process improvement in the future, it would be if there is, how should I put this? An activity that the average person in the public might be challenged to comprehend the rationale for, realizing that most people don't watch these TV shows or go to the meetings that we have, or even read the newspapers if it's reported in the newspapers, that in an abundance of proactive caution, maybe the outreach could occur in advance of the deliberation. And I think paying bonuses, no matter how legitimate the circumstances are, to the exclusion of other taxpayer-supported town employees rises to that level of significance.
Well, you're, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to, and John, I definitely respect your opinion on that. I do want to emphasize, though, unique to the schools versus some of the other town employee departments, we never closed. We were open every single day. And our teachers and our paraprofessionals, our administrators, our administrative assistants were exposed to children every day who came from the 1,000 families in this town, which I think made them a little bit more vulnerable than other employees. And I think that they continued to sort of work outside the box to be successful for their learners, and I think that's more unique, and I think that's why we recognize them.
I get that, and I agree with that, and I understand that completely. I'm talking not about the who or the why, I'm talking about the process.
But just then before you weren't
And
talking about the
maybe
process.
next year or next month or next quarter, it's going to be an issue totally unrelated to COVID and totally unrelated to personnel. But if it's sort of an aberration, that again, if the standard is how would the average taxpayer feel about this activity if they knew about it, that might rise to the level of having a little advanced discussion about it.
Well, I'd hope that you don't climb sort of that negative mountain. We presume positive intent. There is not a pattern of this. I personally don't think that we did mishandle the situation. But again, you did roll in where, before I felt the need to speak, you were more basically saying that you disagreed with this group of employees receiving a merit award, and I was trying to explain to you, from our perspective, why our entire team did deserve this in this unique year. And moving forward, to presume positive intent, we will do our best to have better communication, and I hope that you will sort of
students every day.
have a little bit of a trust. It seems like, and we've never done anything to earn your distrust, but it seems to be a sort of pervasive feeling at this point. So I'm hoping moving forward, like we said, we're open door. Any one of you is welcome to come sit with me at any time. I will go over everything with you, sit with Ashley, our school committee members, So we definitely encourage you to do that rather than sort of absorb what may not be correct information.
Okay, well, I'm disappointed that you characterized my thinking as a lack of respect or willingness to be part of the party, so to speak. I'd be the first to agree that I'm not aware of any history of this sort of dispute ever being present before. And I'm just, trying to be proactive in a positive way, not a critical or destructive way, that in the future, when there's something particularly involving significant amount of funding that is unusual, no matter how legitimate the circumstances at the time might be, that it might rise to the level of being revealed or discussed amongst your partners throughout the town in advance.
Yes, Mr. Collins.
Sitting next to each other again. I don't want to dispute what the school committee did or didn't do. I'm going to start deferring to the superintendent or the school committee when those questions are raised before me. I was asked a question while I was sitting there as to whether or not any others have approached, and the answer is yes. And the police and the fire unions have said, we went into homes of people known to be COVID positive. What are you going to do for us? I tried explaining that I'm not responsible for any action taken at the school. And I'm not being adversarial, I'm just saying that's reality, because they referred to it. So I don't know how to respond to that, other than I don't control that. I'm not saying they made a bad decision. I'm going to keep my mouth shut. I'm just saying I didn't know how to respond to the respective unions who I think, quite frankly, went above and beyond during the COVID crisis. So I do believe that it is important for the town and for the school to collaborate and to keep that door of communication open. I am pleased to say, very pleased to say, that the superintendent and I have had some constructive discussions. The other morning, I sat and had coffee with the chair and the superintendent and the chair of the board. And we're going to plan another one. In fact, I've already said yes to the invite. So
He buys, so I said yes.
So I want to stay positive and just move forward. And I have the utmost respect for Mr. Miller. I don't think he's trying to be adversarial, but I don't want to get into the middle of anything. I have the utmost respect for John. He's a detailed-oriented guy, and he's asked me a lot of questions, and I try to provide timely and accurate answers. And I think he's an asset, and but I think we all just need to bring the temperature down, even though it's very hot in this room right now. And I'm not talking about the back and forth. I'm talking about the fact that the AC is not working. So anyway, that's all I have.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I think this situation has been an aberration for whatever reason. It points out something that we need to stay focused on, which is making sure that whoever needs the information gets it. That's from us to, as well as from other committees, from the town manager. I just think it points out that sometimes in the heat of the moment, we can lose sight of what is best for everybody and making sure everybody who needs to know knows. I'm not saying anybody's particularly at fault. It's just one of those things, especially with the way things have been for the last 18 months. So many of us not having contact with other people, I can lose sight of who I need to keep informed about what's going on. And I just think it's a learning opportunity for us to take forward as we continue to work for the best interests of Mashpee. So,
Absolutely. You guys had asked a few questions about COVID funding.
Yes.
Ashley had distributed those in advance of the meeting, but we do have copies here, if you'd like her to go through that with you.
yeah, if you wouldn't mind going through that, just to let us know.
Do you all have this? Anybody need one? John?
Oh, or is that what this is?
Yes, yes.
Oh, okay. Got it.
I'll take one.
So the document before you runs through June 30th, 2021, the end of the fiscal year. I have been providing this document in some form to my school committee members throughout this fiscal year. As you can see, it's a breakdown of the town of Mashpee and also the Mashpee Public Schools funding that we've received for COVID. If you watched any of our meetings or been able to attend, you know that every time I give my address for my budget, I talk about how grateful the schools are of what the town has done for us and helped us through COVID. That being said, you can see under the town of Mashpee, under CARES and FEMA, the amount of money that the town of Mashpee has supported the schools with since the beginning of the shutdown in March. This is going from 2020 into 21, and you can see it's approximately $800,000. Moving forward, there's the ARPA funds that are both for the town of Mashpee and then Barnstable County. This week, we actually met as a group, both schools and town officials, to discuss what those plans were. We're having ongoing conversations about it right now. We are not asking to use any of the ARPA monies because we have received ESSER 3 funds, and we are going to be using those in FY22. As we move along, you'll see that there is not a total on the COVID funding that we've received. The funding that we've received throughout the year, a lot of it's targeted. When it's given to us, we are told what we need to use it for, and that's what we apply and allocate those funds to. For instance, the first column, the CVRF school reopening, that was to get school open. So as you can see, a lot of our funds there went to technology. That was so kids had devices in their hands, so when they were in school that 1 week, they could have their computer and then also bring it home when they were remote for the week. And then also we had a lot of PPE. So if you were in any of our schools this year, you would see the signage we had everywhere. That's where a lot of those costs went to. Hand sanitizer or the wipes. The town did a lot of that for us, the DPW, and we're very grateful, but those one-off purchases that we had to make all went into that allocation. The next one is the meal program. In December, we were given a very small amount of money to offset our food service program. If you look back into column 1, under CARES and FEMA, you'll see our greatest expense is our food service. Many people know this, but all students received free lunch this year. It didn't matter if you were free or reduced, everyone had the opportunity to have lunch in school. Therefore, that meant we were not receiving the income we typically would throughout the school year to offset our food service account, our revolving account. So when we ended school in March in 2020, there was a deficit in that account, and the town helped us resolve that deficit. So moving forward into FY21, we weren't sure how much income and revenue we were going to receive, so we had directly charged the CARES Act that amount of money throughout the course of the year. In our third column, we had one-time funds that are the CVRF school funds. Those were given at the end of December as well, and we had to spend them by June 30th. That's where we took that money when we found out that the FM amplification systems were not going to be done through capital improvement. That money went to that allocation for that expense. The next column is the Summer Acceleration Academy. The state allocated this money to accelerate learning, so prevent regression of students who are not in school all year at a full capacity. That is happening at the end of August. All of that money is to that program. It cannot supplement anything else. So Hope can speak more to it if you want more details, but we have a targeted set of students coming into our building for 5 days. and it's targeted towards ELA. They're going to be there full day. They will come in, they have full transportation if they want it. They will have lunch, and they will have a special as well. So it's a really great opportunity for those children. And then we move into our ESSER funding. So ESSER 1 and 2 came from the COVID relief, similar to your CARES funding on the town side. ESSER 1 was really just for all of the communities that were struggling. They weren't sure how they were going to make ends meet. So you can see how we allocated those funds. A lot of it, again, went to technology, and a lot of it went to the FM amplification system. Again, if you've watched our school committee meetings, you can see how hard it is just for adults in the room to be able to hear each other. So just imagine those students in the classroom, both at home and in the building. It was very difficult this year. ESSER 2 came out, and we were told that a percentage of it had to be used for mental health. So we are in the process of using that funding right now. It is all allocated. A portion of it went to our Genius Academy, which was the 5-week program held at the high school this year. And again, Hope can talk more about that, but I'm the money side. So that allowed kids, it's a half-day program, 3 days a week, full transportation if they wanted it to and from school. It ended today, and I know Hope and Patty are walking through the building, and the students really loved it, so it was a great opportunity for them. And we have it next summer as well. So that grant, as you can see at the bottom, is lasting us until 2023, where we get to allocate and expend those funds. The third one is ESSER 3. That came out the same time your ARPA funds were distributed. In that, allocation is required to prevent student regression. So again, that will be towards summer schooling and extra help. Those allocations came out towards the end of the fiscal year. They are not due until October, so we are in the process of meeting and allocating those funds and writing the grant. One of those things, like I mentioned at the last Finance Committee meeting, was that we're going to have a stakeholder group, so there will be discussion about what those funds will be used for. Do you have any questions?
This is excellent, and thank you very much. Yeah, a question. So on the Mashpee Public School side, under revenue, if we added those bolded numbers left to right, that would total the revenue that is received or anticipated?
So that is our allocation, so we will be receiving it. As I
Okay.
mentioned in the beginning, totaling it is great to have a grand total. However, it's not just free money that we have. A lot of it's allocated to certain things.
Understood. And then under expenditures, they're labeled planned expenditures. So the 560,000 roughly of these two columns is planned, but not yet spent.
So this was as of June 30th, and as I
Right.
mentioned, Genius Academy was in there, so we're spending those right now.
Okay.
And the Acceleration Academy will be spent by August 22nd.
Exactly.
And are there any similar funds anticipated next year
We do not
that are
know.
not part of this?
We do not know.
Okay. And I assume, I've always assumed that payroll protection is a non-concept when it comes to public employees.
It is
So,
not.
okay. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else?
Any other questions? No. So with that, I'd like to thank Ms. DeBoer and Ashley and Nicole for being here and hopefully clarifying some things for us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. And just to note, as same with your CARES funding, these are above and beyond expenditures that would be our normal operating budget. So again, if we didn't allocate it originally in our operating budget, these are where the expenditures will fall. So I'm always available through email. You can call me in the office if you'd like to ask any additional questions.
And do you want to mention on the ESSER 3 who you're primarily coordinating with?
We done?
Dawn? I mean, these two are together a lot lately. So,
Very well. Yeah, I think that's important to know.
You are known to be joined at the hip.
all right. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Mr. Collins, is there anything else you would like to inform the committee about?
Yes.
Thank you.
The only thing that I wanted to, thank you.
Thank you.
The only thing I wanted to add was, at the last meeting, the Finance Committee had wanted a breakdown relative to our COVID fund use, and we do have that. I don't know, did we make copies?
I can make some copies if they want.
Did or didn't?
I did, yes.
So I just wanted to make sure that you received it.
Does anyone, what did the school committee decide, if anything, on masks last night?
We have not. There is a mask mandate in place from last year,
Yeah.
but we are waiting to hear the board of health meeting.
Okay,
And there's another school committee meeting on August 25th.
thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
If this AC's not fixed, we're gonna hit your reserve fund.
So, I will just run down, this is a very, very basic summary of the COVID funds that we are or are to receive directly from, to the town, or indirectly, I should say, not just directly. So we have the CARES Act fund. Our total allocation to the town of Mashpee was that $1,250,000. That was the CARES Act that has existed since COVID really started, and that's where the majority of the funds we've been using has been. The FEMA funding, FEMA is very, I'm going to say difficult. There's not an exact number. The number you see here, the 233,000, is what the most recent report that I have received back from the representatives. These are what they determined eligible at this point. It still has to go for further review, but we're hoping that this is the amount of funding we'll get from FEMA up through December 30th. So I still am going to submit some applications for January forward, but most of those funds go to public safety. So we do have a limitation on those. They have not given us a number, so I can't tell you that we are to receive 500,000, $1 million. They don't tell us how much. We just submit as many, what we think, eligible expenses that we can, and they either deny them or accept them. So the total between the CARES Act funding that we've been allocated and the FEMA funding I am currently anticipating, and keeping my fingers crossed, is the $1,483,000. The expenditures to date, and this is the entire town, every department, is the $2,031,000. What we asked in the fall, when this continued to go on, we did not want departments to absorb the COVID expenses within their operating budgets. We just felt that that was not appropriate. If you came to us when we're hoping this ends eventually, and said, how much did COVID cost the town of Mashpee? We want to be able to say, this is the total that we've expended, instead of going to each department. Plus, when we go into budgets, we did not want that to be included in there. We're hoping these are not, for the most part, ongoing expenses. So the departments were asked to not spend their operating budgets for COVID expenses. So that's what that $2,031,000 is. Those are truly COVID expenses for all the departments. The funding, if you take the $2,031,000 and you subtract the CARES Act and what we're anticipating in FEMA funding, that's where that $548,000 comes from. So that is, at this point in time, what I have for a deficit. The next piece that everybody's discussing is the ARPA funds. Those are the newest funds that we have been awarded, if you will. We are to receive directly to the town of Mashpee the $1,489,000. The ARPA funds, I have a lot of I do have some guidance I can pass out to you. Their intention, when you read the guidance, and if you watch any webinars, the intention is really larger expenditures. You can cover some expenses, minor expenses. It has to be from an expenditure that started in March forward. But they really are looking more for, I'm going to say infrastructure, something larger and ongoing. That was the big thing that they expressed to us. We're looking for expenditures that are not just, boom, the money's gone. They want us to try to, maybe have projects that are ongoing for a couple of years. And that's why they give you till 2024 to expend the funds.
You have a broader scope, and I'll cut right to the chase. It does include wastewater.
Yes.
And after my brief discussions with board members, that is where I have been directed to focus on those funds.
Yeah, that came up at the selectmen's meeting Monday, right? So in other words, anything that isn't directly appropriate for any of these funds because of COVID could be focused on wastewater, as
Right.
long as it doesn't come at the expense of
The ARPA.
the
Right.
intended purpose.
And I have been advised that there is the possibility that it would be ultimately authorized to go beyond wastewater, whether it be a project or some equipment or whatever the case may be. But it is going to have to be completely justifiable, not anything on the manager's wish list. It's going to have to be an item that is completely justified. And that's what I intend to do.
Sounds good.
And they highly advise, because there is such an extensive variation of the usage of these funds, they advise towns to actually put together, and they call them stakeholder meetings. So any individuals that have, some thoughts can work with the town manager to discuss, maybe some ideas of what they feel would be some appropriate expenditures, and then utilize those funds. As a taxpayer and as the finance director, wastewater, we all benefit from wastewater, and it would help us on the other end as far as our taxes. So, and that is a perfectly acceptable expenditure under the ARPA guidelines. The one, I don't want to say, it's not a difficulty, but what the government is doing is they have provided us with half the funds right now. So we have $749,000, I believe, or $744,000 that we've received up to this point. They will not give us the remaining funds for 12 months. So we received these funds in June. We will not be able to access the remaining $744,000 until next June. And that's part of how they want you to extend the usage of those funds.
These funds are being held by the county.
No, these are the funds coming directly to us.
Yeah, but I mean, the source of the ARPA funds is Barnstable County.
No.
Or is that not right?
No,
No. There's
That's a
two
separate
pieces of
source.
ARPA funding.
I said that because on your report, you referenced Barnstable County ARPA.
That's a separate allocation. So.
All right,
what-
because the total was surprisingly similar to your total down here, the 2.7.
It's actually double,
so-
yeah.
Got it, okay.
Yeah, so the way the ARPA funds are allocated, in Massachusetts, we have 14 counties. There are only 6 that have actual county-style government, and Barnstable County is one of them. The federal government allocated funds directly to municipalities, or through the state, and then there were funds allocated to the counties. If a county government existed, the county received funds on behalf of that municipality. They have a formula for doing that.
Okay.
If you do not have an existing county government, those funds that would have gone to the county went directly to the municipality, or will go directly to the municipality.
We would have received an additional 2 million plus,
2.7, yeah.
2.7, thank you.
You're gonna wait 12 months, but are you guaranteed that's the dollar figure? Or do you know?
As far as the 1.4,
Yeah.
yes, we have received verification. So one of the other important pieces to this is that on behalf of the town of Mashpee, Barnstable County is receiving 2.7 million, which is basically double what we're receiving directly. And I do have, I don't know if you want to pass out the, I don't know if I have enough of them, but this is the guidelines. I don't think there's enough for everybody. I can put some more. What I do have is the guidelines for the ARPA funds and also a spreadsheet that shows what's allocated by municipality and then to the county on behalf of the municipality, just so you can see that. And I think it's really important, and they've stressed, and it's in the guidance, that it's important for local officials to work with the county because those funds are truly on behalf of the town of Mashpee. So they want us to work with the county to say, how is Mashpee going to benefit from these funds? 2.7 million is a significant amount of
So
money.
would it follow if we can't make a legitimate case to utilize those funds, that they would be reallocated to other towns on the
Well,
Cape?
We need to,
vice
that's one of the
versa?
things, we need to work with the county, the local officials need to work with the county, because the county will be holding those funds.
Got it,
So the communication between the municipalities and the county is going to be key
sure.
to that. And I believe, I don't know if you want to, if the town manager wants to speak to that.
We had a meeting in this very room the other day with staff, and I also had a meeting earlier today with other town managers and administrators. And there is going to be some organized communication with the county relative to the funds that the finance director just referenced. I think it's fair that we want to know, particularly since over $2 million would have been earmarked for Mashpee, what is it being used for? I'll leave it at that.
And I believe the town manager did assign myself, Ashley,
Yes,
and
yes.
the assistant town manager
Yes.
to reach out to the county to kind of start the initial conversation. So we're definitely going to stay on top of that, I know that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Perfect. So basically, the ARPA funds, between what we are to receive directly, and I'm talking the first half plus the second half, and then those funds that are going to go directly to the county, the 2.7, that's ARPA funding of 4.2 million, over 4.2 million. So those are funds that are coming through the American Rescue Plan Act.
So the 4.2, based on the highlighted footnote down here, excludes the 2.7 for the schools?
Yes, I did not include any of the school.
So in my chart, the first
Oh,
three
we got to get the
columns-
mic.
The first three columns reference the town of Mashpee, and that's.
Oh, that's right.
Is what Don's talking
Sorry.
about. And then the schools are the second half.
I understand, thank you.
No problem.
Missed
The
that.
numbers should be the same.
Yep, got it.
Or very, very close.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And I know one of the items that did come up, I believe, I heard, there was mention of utilizing some of the ARPA funds for OPEB. And they specifically made that ineligible, unfortunately. So that is not an eligible expense. The OPEB funding, that is not an allowable expense. There are very few things that are not allowable, but that is one of them.
So in practice, on your point, and I agree with that, that keeping the accounting for COVID-related expenditures out of the department budget or P&L is appropriate. So how does that work? So Rodney, if the police chief comes to you and said, you know, my department, for whatever reason, just last week incurred $4,500 worth of COVID-related funds, does that get paid for out of this fund that you
Yes.
oversee, it doesn't get folded into their operation and then backed out later or
Yes.
something like that.
As the finance director already indicated, for the purposes of tracking, we really want to make sure that there's a direct nexus to the COVID-related expenses versus what the funds are that are
And I'm
being
sure the department heads are eager to have it happen that way for
Now,
obvious reasons.
I will caution you that there are some things that may carry over that might result in a slight increase. I'm sure you'd say, well, give me an example. The filtering system at the schools and things of that nature that we have looked at as a result of COVID and now have learned probably when you're starting to talk about air quality, these are things that should continue regardless of whether COVID exists or not. So I don't want to suggest to you that there won't be some slight adjustments that we may be seeking, but I dare say that that's going to be the exception and not the norm, and we're going to isolate the COVID-related expenses as the finance director has described, and you'll be able to see a complete breakdown when this is over, and it can't be over soon enough for me. And you'll be able to see where the money was spent and why.
So looking forward to the upcoming budget cycle, when we take a look at your actuals for the year on there, is that's going to be, I'm assuming that's going to be combined, showing all your expenses, both COVID and non-COVID, or are we just
Right.
going to be looking at the non-COVID?
The operating,
The operating will be skewed a little.
Right.
and that's the
You-
other.
And you got to realize that, and I'll explain that as we get into the budget
Right.
process.
Right.
Do you
And
want to elaborate?
I was just going to say, the turnbacks that you'll see, and we haven't gotten to that point, we're actually closing the fiscal year tomorrow, so I'm sure the town manager will, once we update him with all the information, he'll keep the local officials updated as well. You may see more turnbacks because these expenses are not in there. That doesn't mean that they would not have actually expended those funds if this had been normal times.
Right.
So that's the other important piece that I wanted to make sure everybody understood once those figures actually come out. So that's important. The other item that just brainstorming and thinking about the upcoming budget cycle, for COVID expenses that we are truly going to make operating expenses, such as the filters, we can have those departments in the detail of the budget mark new COVID-related expense, or something that oh, this is new. So their budget increased by, $10,000 because we needed X. That,
Sure.
Was originally covered through COVID, but now is going to become a normal annual operating expense. So we can do things like that just to make it a little more clear in that instance.
You could probably even make a case, take the cost of gasoline, for fire, police, municipal vehicles and so forth. You could make a case that a piece of that cost escalated as a result of COVID and maybe move it into the COVID column, maybe?
Or like separate what would be normal
What would be normal from
expenditures.
what's extraordinary, so
Yeah, if that's what, if that,
That might be,
drive you nuts doing it.
Yeah,
yeah,
that might be a little more
that might be a challenging
challenging.
task, but I will say that we're locked in to a really low
Just a thing.
gas per gallon price, so.
well, I know one of the expenses is utilities, the heating and the
Yep.
cooling. Especially the heating in the winter, some of the buildings need to have the windows open
Right.
and the heat's going.
Yeah,
So of
good
course, your
point.
heating bills are going to go much higher. We hope that's a temporary thing, but if it becomes normal operating procedure, that might be something to consider as well. But I know that, whatever the departments are asked to do to identify any increases due to that, they would be more than willing to do that, I'm sure.
Well, this is great. Thank you both.
And I do thank Ashley, the two of us have really been working well. You know, this has been probably the most challenging accounting in my I'm in my 25th year, and I've never experienced this before. It's very challenging, and it's difficult for me to provide black and white answers, and accounting is normally black and white, you know, so it's difficult for me to have to come and say, well, this is what I'm hoping, this is what I'm looking at.
You can pick up a handful of definitions.
Yeah, yes, I know. And it's confusing to everyone. The guidelines have changed throughout this thing, what we can charge, what we can't charge. So, you know, I just try to keep the town manager up to date as much as I can, and any changes that come about, we do that. So.
We'll do another show, I think. You and me.
There was one other question from the last meeting regarding the marijuana taxes and potential revenues from that.
Yes, and I knew there was one other question, and I was trying to think of it earlier, and I could not for the life of me remember that. But the answer is, we don't have the, how do I want to put it? Coming out of the gate, the funds are not quite as high as originally anticipated, but, and I didn't refer this question to you, so do you have any idea what?
I have not looked at them. I don't know if it's coming quarterly, which the meals tax and the occupancy tax does come quarterly, so I would think it would be a similar fashion.
Yeah.
So we may not know for another month
Okay.
what those look like, but I will certainly provide the
I'm-
town manager with that
I meant to
information.
follow up with you, Mr. Chair, and did not do so earlier because I was a little busy, but I assure you, you'll have something at the next meeting so that you can take a look at the numbers.
Yeah. Well, yeah, if it's coming quarterly, not expecting it, just trying to get a sense of just
Yep.
how it's gonna start playing out.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And we can all step up and make it a little higher, you know?
Some of us already have.
You speaking for anyone in particular, Mike?
Are there any other questions?
I've heard that, you know, it's a great thing to use for the sake of curing some of the aches and pains.
Well, we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, I'm just going to leave it at that.
Any other questions for Mr. Collins?
Not here.
If not, I will see you at the next meeting.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. The next item on our agenda is
I think we need to wish Dawn a happy birthday. It's her birthday today.
happy birthday.
My pleasure spending it with all of you.
She spent it with the finance committee. I think this is the second year in a row, isn't it?
You poor thing.
Wow, what an honor. Next year we'll bring cake, you know, it's-
Next year, Mike, we're going to bring a cake.
Yeah, we'll do that.
All right.
must be tough being 24.
The next item on the agenda is the town warrant for the October meeting. Since most of us are looking at this for the first time, I don't know whether you want to take a week to review it and really start getting into it next week?
Yeah.
Or,
That works for me, and I was at the selectmen's meeting Monday, and they went through it, and their tallies are noted on this version of it. But a lot of it, about half of the stack of paper here is planning board issues, and they're not dealing with those until the planning board has.
yeah.
So there's really not too much substance.
I was giving it a quick look earlier, Yeah, it's only about 25 to 27, somewhere's in there, articles at the moment.
Yeah.
Which shouldn't give us too much of a time, trouble. Read just the first one, it's all about the Board of Selectmen changing their name to the Select Board. So, we'll take a week to review it. If it's all right with everybody, I'll go through and assign, as I did last year, the grid, develop the grid for the articles and assign the individuals who are writing the explanations, so that we'll have all that to kick off with. And as soon as I get that done, I'll send it to everybody, and we can start working on those, because it's coming up really quickly. Which brings us to the last item on the agenda. We have a meeting scheduled for September 16th, which we cannot hold. It is Yom Kippur, and we're not allowed to have a public meeting that night, or the Wednesday night before. So we need to, since that is the last meeting before our report gets submitted, we're gonna have it more than likely the Tuesday night.
Tuesday, the 21st?
No, Tuesday night, the 14th. September 14th.
Okay.
That'll be after the Board of Selectmen have finalized the warrant. And the report has to be uploaded on Friday, and we wouldn't have to be able to meet until later in the day on Friday. So that doesn't serve Terry and getting that uploaded, so, we're gonna have to change that to that Tuesday, which would be the 14th.
Yeah, works for me.
I would request, because I've actually got another meeting for myself at 8 o'clock that night, if we could have this meeting earlier, maybe even just an hour earlier at 5:30.
Okay.
That would be great, so, yeah, I didn't think about it, when I was putting that together, and the fact that, why wouldn't we be able to have the meeting, and say, oh, it's a public hearing, and they would not be able to attend.
Yep.
The Jewish people would not be able to attend it,
Yeah.
so. And it all made sense once I thought about it. So I will make the change to our schedule and notify the town clerk so that they can get us reserved for that night. All right. Okay, and anything else?
Just wondering if you've had any success in recruiting a recording secretary or
Nope.
administrative assistant or whatever the
Nothing so far.
appropriate title is. No one's come forward even, huh?
Nope.
Wow, sign of the times. Can we rent the school committees? Clerk?
Yeah, it's a little frustrating, and I'd like to thank Pat again for taking the minutes for tonight. That's what he gets for being the first one here.
Oh, I should have come later. No.
I thought it was because of the ESQ designation.
That's because he did it last time.
No.
Well, I will say, he did impress me with the job he did on them, so it's like, it wasn't.
You're telling me now I should mess this up, so I don't, that's what I do with my food cooking, I mess it up so I don't have to do it again.
All right. So our next meeting is scheduled for next Thursday, 6:30. So that be start going through the warrant in detail. If, as you're going through, if you have any questions, if you get them to me, I can get them to the town manager so that he can be prepared with answers for us next week. So that will make things a little bit faster, instead of posing them to him there and have him come back with them. All right?
I'm probably going to have to miss next week. Matter of fact, I will have to miss it, sorry.
Okay. All right. Looking for a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Hearing none. We are adjourned at 6:45.